fishy moment is coming. So if we're going to just look at raw numbers, there are 940 million people in the world with some degree of vision loss. 246 million, and this is the number we're going to focus on for today, have low vision or legally blind. For all intents and purposes, legally blind. 39 million of those is completely blind. 2.2 billion of the world plays games. 1 billion pays money for games. We're going to focus on that. So that is 13.2% of the world's population that pays for games. Does that sound good so far? So if you keep following me, we're going to take that percentage and we're going to apply it to the 246 million low vision, legally blind people. This is saying that of the world's population, there are 6.5 million English-speaking blind people. And I said English-speaking because this talk does not focus on translation and localization. All right, it's a good thing to think about. That's not what we're doing here today. So, looking at your game, looking at what your creative project is trying to do, to build a bridge, you will get access to 6.5 million English-speaking blind people. That number could be higher, could be a bit lower, but it's still something really important to think about.
So basically, this is a whole new audience, like, that you could be providing to your games. So the total number of posts on audiogames.net has a very broad batch of players on there that are thirsty to play games. They discuss a lot as well.
Super enthusiastic.
Yeah,
You'll never need a more like fervorous group of people that want to get to your games than blind gamers, because there just isn't enough out there. Sorry, we didn't explain. Audiogames.net is the main forum for audio games, which is the genre blind people play. Cool?
Yeah.
70,000 registered users in the past 15 years. That's worth knowing. This is just a really quick going through. We're at a point where we're focusing on accessibility, right? We're saying this is important, this is worth doing. In the future, it is going to increase exponentially with the current generation who grew up playing all the old games, Commodore 64, NES, whatever. We're going to be senior citizens in the next 2 decades, which means all the disabilities that come with that are coming. You will be irrelevant if you don't start thinking about accessibility in a big way. All right, this is a big thing, and it's on its way, and you need to be ready for it. And we'll show you how. Cool, so one of our first things is talking about immersion.
So thorough and well-designed sound furthers both immersion and accessibility for blind and low vision players. And then we're going to show something in regards to syncresis as well.
Yeah, syncresis is this theory that we have this really visceral psychological need to pair a sound with something that we're seeing, right? If the sound doesn't work on a game or a movie, you can't handle it, right? You have to fix it immediately. It's not right, it feels weird. So that's called syncresis. And syncresis, it allows us to get away with a lot of things as sound designers. That's where we both started, by the way. And in this next scene coming up, it is good old-fashioned Terminator 2, where you will see Laura Connor running. She's bare feet, she's very clearly bare feet. But you don't hear bare feet sounds, and nobody noticed for like 10 years, right? Nobody knew that they totally lied to us through their sound design. And all this is doing is illustrating how powerful a force syncresis is. The entire world was fooled. Cool, so we'll just get that. Yeah. And it's heels. They didn't use bare feet at all. That's the sound of a woman running in heels on a hard floor. Nobody noticed for a really long time. And again, it just goes back to how much we need sound paired with what we're seeing. We don't care, to a certain extent, what that sound is. You can use that trickery in your game design. All right, onto the kind of warmer side of things. We mentioned raw numbers. We mentioned why you have such a broad audience that is just thirsting, hey, Twitch streamers, whatever. Like, all you want people to do is check you out and just like join your idea, right? Pairing that idea with the number of blind gamers in the world that are just waiting for you to build that bridge of accessibility. Suddenly your selfish little idea that you started alone, you started building alone, hours alone coding, whatever, suddenly that little silly idea, that game world in your head, is literally making the world a better place. It's bringing all of the things that we get through games to people that don't have it. I cannot overstate how powerful that is, and I feel like you guys get it. So we'll go on with just a great quote.
Yeah. So Ian Hamilton said, games offer access to culture, recreation, and socializing, which are things that can mean the difference between existing and living.
Yeah. And he, if you know that name, some people, Ian Hamilton, have we heard of the name before?
Yes.
Friends. Okay. Ian Hamilton is one of the accessibility specialists he's based in the UK, but he's created the site gameaccessibilityguidelines.com, and I'm actually just going to pause if anybody wants to take a photo, whatever, you need this site in your life in a big way. So this site it lays out different types of accessibility in a kind of rubric form. So if you feel like your skills are somewhat basic, that's fine. You go to the basic tab. You say, what can I do to look at people with colored blindness and get them playing my puzzle games that rely on red and green? If you're feeling more advanced, you go to, the advanced tab, whatever, and you say, all right, what can I do to get somebody with muscular dystrophy playing my game? And then they'll lay out what you can do in advanced steps. I can't recommend that enough. That site is huge. And Ian Hamilton, he really knows his stuff. All right, on to kind of the thesis. The main point. The age of retrofitting accessibility into your game is over. It's done. It is gone. You do not, in this day and age, you cannot finish a game and then look back and say, hey, what can I do? Right now, you need to be thinking of accessibility the moment you start thinking about that first game mechanic. The moment you start thinking about player health. The second you begin your story. It's time to start thinking of accessibility. Even if it's just, color blindness. Something that with all of the automated testing out there is somewhat easy to understand when you've crossed the barrier of confusing people. All right? So, in a big way, you just can't finish a game anymore and then look back. And we've all done it. It's no judgment. It's the way game dev has gone forever until now. So it's not like, I don't mean to sound so scolding, but this is just, it's time to evolve. And at your own peril if you don't. Hey, didn't mean to do that. It's time to evolve. Cool. Yeah, so I just thought to do that. That's good.
So as Karen Stevens has said, it's a mindset, not a feature. It really should be considered at every stage of development.
And this is just another voice saying what we're saying, backing us up. Karen Stevens, she does a lot of really good work, proactive work in certain disability communities. She works for EA, and her Twitter account is EA_accessible. And all she's doing all the time is, hey, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? She's going out into the communities. She's not researching in books. She does some really cool things, and she did a great talk at GDC earlier this year as well. Past and current blind gaming landscape. Has anybody here heard of audio games? Audio game genre. It's okay if you haven't. It's like a niche of a niche. Cool. So audio games are literally non-visual games. They're audio games. All there is audio. We're going to listen to a few. And in the second one, and possibly the third one, is you're going to hear a very British voice, and it is clearly not mine. And this is my colleague Paul. He's the programmer for one of the companies that I'm working with. They're called Evidence Sky Studios. They are a blind development team. All of the three of them are completely blind, no vision, and they're creating software for blind gamers to create their own games, code-free, scripting-free. As far as I know, that's not being done anywhere. So I'm probably going to come to them again at the end and say, please check out Twitter, which I'm in charge of.
It really do.
Yeah. It was Ebon Sky Studios, EBON Sky Studios. Twitter handle, I wish I put it up, I'm sorry. Twitter handle is @Ebon Sky Studios. Cool, let's listen to some audio games, hey? So in the first one, you're not going to hear a voiceover. Actually, sorry, you want to talk about the end of this one?
Well, this one is literally a first-person shooter, and as you can hear,
that's good. Next slide. Cool. Awesome. So there's some really strange stuff at play here that in design that you wouldn't know. First off is blind gamers do not use a mouse. That's a big generalization. It is largely true. It is not completely true. There are some out there that do. But a mouse is completely visual based, and it doesn't have any tactile feedback, so you don't know anything about where your mouse points. This game works with a mouse, but what the designer has done is he's put it on a snap for the enemies. So when you're moving the mouse, it's going to, if I'm moving with an enemy right in front of me, it's going to stay here until I move it drastically this way. So the aiming is on like a kind of grid system, but you wouldn't know. And nobody knew for a long time. He just came out recently and was like, oh, by the way, haha, I'm so tricksy. And we were like, yeah, you are. And everybody was blown away. Nobody knew that that was how it worked. Like, how does this game function? Because I don't know how to get any information on where my mouse is. But this is arguably the most popular audio game, by the way. That's important to know. Yes, the Swamp. And it's because it's also almost the only FPS. Because how do you design an FPS with only audio? Like, that hurts my brain to think about. But he did it, and like almost nobody else has ever done it. I mean, there's some out there, but this is the big one. If you want to check it out, all these games are free, by the way. So if you want to have a tinker with audio games and kind of step into a different world, audiogames.net. They're literally just a community saying content on games. Heroes Call. This one actually is somewhat mainstream. It had a successful Kickstarter. I think they got around 10,000 or so ish, which was a lot more than what they wanted. They came out and they paid all their voice actors, and it's a turn-based RPG. Turn-based is huge in the blind community because time creates pressure when we need to kind of listen to hear how much health I have. We need to listen to hear how much mana I have. So time doesn't work well as a mechanic. So more on that later.
Hi Brian, so this is the second demo of the day. So this one is showing off how the navigation works in a Heroes Call. Now navigation is a little bit different here, so it's a little bit more minimalistic. So there are just 4 radar sounds, which I'm going to quickly show you.
Pause menu.
Let me just bring up the sounds.
Sounds reference.
So
Radar,
firstly,
radar,
you're walking along
open
and
space.
all of a sudden there's an open space, say, to your left. In the left ear it will play the open space sound, which is this. That's the open space sound. Now that will just play once to let you know there's an open space, and it doesn't then play again. Let's say you walk along with that open space to your left and all of a sudden a building appears on your left. It will then play the closed space radar sound to let you know there's no longer an open space, there's might be a wall or a building or something like
Radar.
that. And this will sound like this. That just plays once, and again once that's played, it notifies you there's a building there.
Cool. So we probably hadn't thought much like that before. If you're like me, maybe you aren't. Maybe you're probably a lot smarter. I hadn't considered that you could do something so simple to create a simple navigation system. This is not complicated. If you're a programmer, if you're into scripting, there's nothing technologically complicated here. There's nothing you need to, YouTube or take a course on. This is so simple. It's just teaching your player at the very beginning, this is what this means, using it. That's it. It's just a simple sound one-off firing every time you pass by a doorway. So these things that we thought were impossible, suddenly, with our knowledge of game dev, really, just as listening, you can understand that these mechanics are very simple. They're very easily attained. You just need to put a little research into it, really. We're going to skip Man. And we're going to go straight to yes. Next slide. Right. Sable is the engine I was telling you about before. It is the engine for blind people to create games script-free, code-free. Again, there's nobody doing this at all, ever, as far as I know. I might be missing someone, it happens, but I've got my fingers in a lot of pies in terms of what is happening with blind accessibility. As far as I know, this is it. These are the only people that are doing it, and I'm not talking myself up here because I'm their sound designer and composer and PR agent. So this is not me saying, look at how great I am. It's me saying, there's very simple tech happening. It is launching blind gaming forward in leaps and bounds. It's not complicated. It's just kind of twisting our thinking a little. Oh, that was in the middle. Okay.
Objects. Barrel. Building creator.
Please enter a name for the building edit. Enter. Please enter the building's ID. Enter.
Please select floor type for building. Wood. Please select wall type for the building. Stone. Music. In music. Building mode activated. Width 2, width 4, width 5, length 5. Building size set. Generating building. Building added to map.
We'll open it up for questions quickly. How did that sound to you guys? Was there anything you didn't understand? Was there anything that you think would be complicated to implement? Anything? Any thoughts? Yes.
From an auditory processing point of view, in terms of the overlapping audio, was very
Yes.
confusing and
It
very
is.
overwhelming.
It is.
So-
It is. And has anybody here ever listened to a recording of somebody who's blind going through their computer? It's exactly what that is. Yeah, quite a few. It's exactly that. And it's very overwhelming for us to hear. But it's just every day for them, isn't it? Like, that's still unpleasant to me, is to hear all these layers of words and trying to pick them out. But that's bread and butter for somebody who's blind. They're gonna fly through their computer and it literally sounds like and you can't understand any of it. Because it's memorized key strings. So I agree with you, and I'm sorry that I didn't have a slightly slower example, but also the realism of it is that was my associate Paul, who was going through the map creator. So that was a blind man. Yeah, but yes.
But for a low vision or a visually impaired person like myself, who is a component of these audio games as well, that doesn't necessarily cater to us. And I understand that it's not necessarily our kind, like it's not our game per se.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to have a function to necessarily be able to turn it down or
Right.
ramp
Right.
that slower.
Right. Yes. And I will say also a lot of that was due to his speed.
Yeah.
It was due to the way that he chose to go through the program. It wasn't due. It may force audio on you before as we learn how to use it. But you're absolutely right. In terms of how you want to use the program, it's as slow as you like. So it's largely due to him flying through this, because he was the programmer. I should have mentioned that. I'm sorry. He designed that, so he probably slowed that way down for me. Whereas he would just be flying through, make a map in 9 seconds. So that's absolutely valid. Thank you for that. So we'll just take a minute to talk about mainstream games that have got it right. The blind community calls all sighted games mainstream games. Okay? They're not talking about Spider-Man, they're not talking about whatever is super popular, they're not talking about AAA, they're talking about sighted games. Okay? So mainstream means non-audio games to them. And I'll be using that same terminology. Pokemon stumbled into incredible blind accessibility. They didn't intend to, but they got there, so they still get credit, bless them. Pokemon Crystal is, with a few mods that you can find easily online, is one of the most accessible games of all time. Why? Turn-based combat. Collision sounds for every different material. If you walk into a wall, it's different from walking into a tree. Different monster sounds, it's a huge one. So anytime that there's thorough sound design in the game, it's aiding somebody with no or low vision to play the game. And again, they didn't intend it. But awesome. It doesn't matter. We're here. They have a great game. Blind people have a great game to play. Pokemon did a lot of things right in terms of really thorough sound design. So that's something to kind of keep your mind in. Is sound design is just a little too minimalistic the way we look at it now. grain of salt, we're sound designers. Seriously, go hire us. So, Skullgirls. Sorry, I've color-coded these in genre. I'm sorry. I thought about it. I made a key. It looked super ugly, and I said, no, we're moving on. Skullgirls. Fighting genres in stereo are incredibly accessible. Yeah, recently, what was it? There was a Dutch player, Street Fighter 5, who just won a world tournament, like, I think it was last year, maybe even just a little bit beyond that. But, I mean, he was the best in the world until he was beaten a week later. But a blind player was the best player in the world. That's huge.
I think it was actually for a month.
Was it?
Yeah.
Longer than that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are things happening that we rarely hear about. Fighting games in stereo are probably the biggest genre you can see. Mortal Kombat and Soul Calibur, those are actually just coming onto the audio games forums. They're saying, check this out when you tweak these settings, whatever. Again, I don't know if those companies intended incredible accessibility, but at this point it doesn't matter. Let's learn from them. Let's steal it. Madden did not start very accessible. And then Karen Stevens, who we quoted earlier, she's EA accessible. She went out to the community and said, what can we do to get you playing our game? Sports is one of the hardest to make accessible to almost anyone because it's always fast. It is always very specific where you're aiming something or doing something on the screen. And menus, especially in football. There are so many menus of like plays to memorize and players and statistics. So she's going out in the community saying, I need your help. Let's do this together. And it's really coming together. Just a simple example, the kick strength meter. They did not make that accessible in the beginning because there's no audio to show how strong your kick is. They fixed that since. It sounds great, it works great. And Minecraft is worth mentioning because there are some player-created mods that make it accessible, that make this sound very 3D spatialized. Sorry. Right. This one
So, a lot of devs are avoiding text-to-speech because they think a random robotic voice will break immersion, like what we heard earlier. With Microsoft's cognitive speech APIs, an in-game voice actor can provide all the audio necessary to generate real-time text-to-speech in your game. And they provide, 5,000 transactions?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what transactions means. I think it might mean if you're using this code, you only have to pay after 5,000 lines have been generated by users. I think it's not by you. But anyway, it's free for a while. We all need to try it out. Is there any voice actors in the room? This might mean a little less work for you. It's generating. Do we all understand what that means? By the way, it's taking your unique voice, creating something they call a voice font, and it's literally taking a script you've read, it's picking sounds from their pre-described script and making, like generating words through their program. Do we all understand that's good? Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons that we sometimes avoid text-to-speech stuff, breaking immersion, right? Suddenly there's a robot chiming in your ear when you're trying to like cast Fireball and stuff. So that's not a thing anymore. That's really worth knowing. Cool. So we're just gonna kind of fly through the tech that blind people are using now, because I really want to illustrate how far behind we are in gaming. Tech is flying ahead, and in gaming we're struggling. We're really not even trying, some of us, and that's okay. It's hard. It's weird. This is Seeing AI. Has anybody heard of Seeing AI before? It's a free program by Microsoft. It is literally a camera that will identify people. It will identify facial expressions. It will identify gender. It will identify hair color, and the facial expressions go really deep. They called me contentious. I have to know myself.
Oh, they called me smiling, so that was good.
Yeah.
Well, it was
like
excellent.
you.
Yeah,
That's fine.
maybe I was doing smile.
No big deal. They can also scan short text. The people on my team at the Sky Studios, they use this to read their mail because they're not taking their neighbors. They use it to describe a product. We tried that one out, it didn't work. I don't know if you have to scan, maybe it's just America, I don't know. And we talked about facial expressions. Oh, a full document, I'm sorry. The full document, you hold it up and it will say the edges are not on the screen. The edges are not on the screen, the edges are not on the screen until you fix it, and then you can save it and you can read it. That's how one of my colleagues, again, plays Magic. He's way into Magic, so he's taken his deck and he's stuck the sticky gem things on them, and he's memorized the kind of reality. Oh, he has a stylus too, maybe he's that. And he's brailled his Magic cards, but when he's playing with other people who's never played before, he just holds CAI over and it'll read the cards to them if he's allowed to see it, of course. Microsoft Soundscape.
Yeah, and then Microsoft Soundscape. This basically acts as a beacon for anyone that uses it. To announce as they're going around, it recognizes things around them to announce the shops, buildings, addresses, and then even lets them know of any upcoming obstacles and even park benches. You know?
Yeah, those are actually user-based. So if you're walking and you stumble, you can actually, I think you can put in, hey, there's something here. But in very built-up areas, I think my associate lives near London, north of London. So I mean, he'll be walking and it'll say park bench to your left, street light coming up. So picture Google Maps, incredibly, kind of zoomed in. This is the tech we're competing with in the game sector. We are behind. So yeah, we're behind the cutting edge in game dev. There's access to incredible tech, and we don't. I'm not saying we have to use this tech, because that's not what it's made for. But in terms of advancement, in terms of accessibility, we're behind in games. Yeah. All right, fun part. So here are our games. Here's this may seem like we're talking ourselves up, but it's the complete opposite. We want you to see this and just take all of it. Just steal everything that we're doing. We've got business cards. You can follow me on Twitter after this. I'll post these videos. Take it all.
Yeah.
All right, please.
All this into these games. And,
yeah. So this is the first one. This is my game. It's called Lost and Hound, and fun. And it's about you play as a scent tracking dog, and you need to follow a scent trail. The scent trail is represented by audio. It's a low drone on the ground. So picture a maze, picture no walls, and the layout is invisible and represented by scent. People who are sighted and have played this, they didn't know that it was made for blind people in mind until I told them afterwards, and then it made total sense. But that's the kind of elegance that we can enact as game devs. We can accomplish these things, and it'll result in immersion for sighted people, and they're not going to know. And it'll result in full accessibility for blind people. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
We can relax. Oh, you know what? I'm going to actually read these out because just in case we have low vision here. So this says main scent mechanic. Follow the hum scent trail to the lost victim. You'll hear the hum go in and out. It's gone, you're off the scent. Sound attenuation switch. When dog stops moving and lifts its head, ears are tall and receive sound fully. You can hear straight in front of you for a long way. When the dog looks down, all you can hear are footsteps. Does sound behavior ever change in your game? Audio anchors. Each area or level needs something to allow players to create a map in their head. The river can be heard from almost all areas of this level, bisecting it. Mark a spot to set its look. I'm sorry. I've talked to it. You gotta forgive me. Mark a spot to set its location for a sniff, and a 3D sound effect will sound off like sonar. It's like a resettable waypoint. Sound as obstacles. Running causes heavier footsteps and panting, making it harder to listen. Most music is diegetic and in-world. This makes music completely optional. All right, can we stop this one for the end? Thank you. You got it. Cool. We will actually go to questions after we see the next video instead of going over what you just saw. That's cool. So those are all the things. We'll come back to this slide in a minute. Yeah, we can go to the next one, which is Legacies. Cool.
So the next game is Legacies that we've been working on. So
And you read these out. Just for
Yeah.
revision.
all right, so can you? Yep. Thank you. So with this one, the lower in the water the player is, the more often one hears the metallic clangs. This informs a blind player of their depth in a natural way that is subtle enough not to bother sighted gamers. So there's unique sounds for every function, which is often overlooked. So as you can see, we've got different sounds for the ballast as well, going up and down. Here, how the engine tone is responding to the vertical angle of the sub. This informs a blind player if the sound is low, they'll eventually hit the ocean floor. Yeah. We've also used voice acting and accents to add flavor. Is your soundscape customizable? Not a vital feature, but it's worth thinking about. That's cool. Audio spatialized waypoints. So this one we've worked in, so as you can hear, it's sending it out, then it actually sends it back, sound where it is. And then there's the Watson mechanic as well.
We'll talk about it later. Take some
Yeah.
time to explain.
This one's and me. Soundscape attention to detail. Hear the difference between one underwater sound, two approaching the surface and hearing waves overhead, three waves passing above the surface.
Sharks? No, I mean there's a ton of sharks and I need something.
So yeah, is it fun? Is it challenging? Here a character must stealth through the trenches to avoid the sharks. So here we're using the sonar mechanic, which you can also toggle in-game solution to avoid blind players of the landscape formation, so they can get through, say, a low trench. And also, do the emotions of your visuals translate to sound? This is just an added extra feature just to bring more depth into the gameplay.
Cool. All right, we will take questions in just a moment. I wanted to end the official presentation, and I know we skipped over the Watson mechanic. We'll talk about that. We wanted to end the official presentation with one of my favorite quotes of all time. It's appropriately from one of the creators of Penny Arcade. Every creative act is open war against the way it is. What you are saying when you make something is that the universe is not sufficient, and what it really needs is more you. And it does, actually, it does. Go look outside. You can't tell me that we are done making the world. And that's Tycho from Penny Arcade. Cool, questions time. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was amazing. All right.
So we've got a microphone set up there, so if anyone wants to come up and ask questions,
Yeah, please.
please.
Given, do you think one day games might have sort of like the audio description in movies?
I think it's possible. I think as consumers, it's something we can request of game devs. Do you mean mainly in cinematics or just all the time?
Both Cinemax and
Both?
yeah, all the
Okay.
time.
I think it's something worth trying out. I would certainly be interested in doing it. I think that we would need to bring that to the attention of more devs and talk about it. I would say absolutely. Yeah, no reason not to, as an added option. Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey guys, do you think there's a possibility of making games languageless? And if you can, what tips would you put towards that?
I think that's smart. I think it's a really smart question. I think Sims got close. You know, because when you exactly, and we all think, oh, they're so dumb, but really, I mean, they didn't have to localize all of them. I mean, they just gave that out to everybody in the world, and it worked.
The emotions came through in the languages if
Yeah. I mean, we would probably have to start as kind of like an art project in terms of like, can we achieve communication non-verbally
through a project like you said before.
You can definitely do that, especially with music as well, because music can flow through so many emotions as well. So that could possibly be one way.
A lot of forethought.
Yeah.
But absolutely. Yeah, that would be a cool project to look at.
I was thinking about this stuff, but unfortunately, through your talk, you're going all audio, and it doesn't cater if you went heavily video and visual to aid the languageless approach.
Yeah. I mean, and one of the reasons that we didn't is because if we compare what blind gamers have access to and we compare what deaf gamers have access to, it's no contest. You know, so we wanted to focus where there wasn't. Thank you. Yeah, that's cool to think about. I like that.
Yeah.
Just come on up, or microphone in the back, please. Yeah.
On the same note, would a tactile response possibly be a good option for that? As in, say a sound is on your left, you vibrate, let's say a pad on their most left-hand finger on the other hand.
I think that's a really good idea. I think that would really work transmitting tactile information. I think the main barrier to that is that most blind and low vision gamers are not console because it's not as accessible. And for a PC game where most of them play, we don't have that kind of easily accessible equipment. Maybe an Xbox controller, but that actually might be more in the hands of devs to program.
Or a vibrating mouse pad or something?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, that's furthering our whole mission here of taking that talk to devs, saying, listen, this is an option, could be cool, try it out. Yeah, that lies in our hands, doesn't it? Yeah, good question, thank you.
I want to break it. Hi, I'm Maggie, and thank you so much for coming out today and
Thank you for coming. Yeah.
It's kind of funny actually. I'm studying my master's at MIT, and I'm focusing on accessibility, and particularly with trying to make video games for the blind.
Really?
And
let's talk.
Yeah.
absolutely. I'll give you my
I need a coffee.
Awesome.
And I came to this talk thinking, okay, they might touch on the topic I'm looking at, and I'm sure they'll focus on the broader. Sorry, I'm rambling now.
We just rambled for 40 minutes.
And I'm sitting there nodding my head
That's,
to everything you're saying, going, yes, thank you, you're backing up everything I've been trying to promote to my lecturers, going, yes, we need this.
Yeah.
And my cousin, he's such a trooper. He's been playtesting a little bit of what I've been making, and I'm actually a visual artist.
Yeah.
Is my background is visual arts, and I'm teaching myself programming, I'm teaching myself sound design, and trying to build this 3D immersive space.
Yeah.
Where I'm going to be running around as this adventurer, and the game's called Grandmas, and the idea is you're this little kid trying to find all these pieces of the music box. So I'm trying to find different ways and how I can make it enjoyable and for him and for everyone else who comes to play the game, and trying to figure out, right, what more could I be doing to make it more accessible so it's not going on, should I tell you that I'm finding this difficult, or is there another way I can go about it?
Well, we do have, like in the legacies, it does have a lot of narrative in the game. So we basically have made sure that you're constantly getting informed of what's going on. But you also have to balance the fact that you also have to tell them of what's going around as well. And it's just we find being able to like balance that proves a really good way to basically tell what's going on around the whole world. And then, well, we're sound designers, so
Yeah.
sound.
I mean, we'd love to chat with you about
Yeah.
strategies for what are we going to localize in terms of 3D, what information we need to get to them. Please come and grab a card, and that's for everybody. Please come and grab our cards. Please, let's chat. That would be amazing. I didn't give you much of an explicit. We didn't give you much of an explicit strategy, but I think we would need to kind of interface a bit. Yeah.
That's okay, I don't think I gave you explicit questions.
That's fine. If you got time afterwards,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, cool,
That's fine.
excellent.
Yeah. Keep going around and take a picture.
Yeah. You go first. If you want.
Thank you so much for a bloody wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I don't work in the dev space. I work more in the policy space. I'm one of the I'm one of the MPs from WA, and I've got the video game portfolio. So this is excellent. It combines two of my great loves. So thank you. From the perspective of the folks that you have worked with on this, the developers that you've collaborated with, my mind goes to where the line is between the role of encouragement. So, like you've detailed the market opportunity for your game if you do these things. So the line between that and where we have to actually start saying, nah, come on guys, you have to make your games accessible.
Yeah.
Whether that's kind of industry self-regulation or government. I hate to say government regulation in this space because it's never good. But you know what I mean? Like in any other policy area where we've talked about universal design for disabled people, we get to a point where you actually have to put your foot down, metaphorically speaking in this case, and say, nah, can't do inaccessibility anymore. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Your thoughts on if we think the government needs to step in to get the process rolling?
Where that line is between you know, promoting it to people that think it's a good idea, fantastic.
Yeah.
Industry promoting it to other parts of industry, and government incentivizing it or disincentivizing not doing it.
I mean, my own opinion is that the movement is going to start grassroots style with indies making very small audience games. That's the purpose of this. I don't know if I'm right, but I think it needs to start from the ground up. Some AAA games are doing some great things, and they have the money. So bless them, they don't get a free pass for doing those great things. I think at the ground level with what we're doing here is just saying, listen, literally free fans. Like, are you interested in some free fans? Well, then let's talk. You know, I think we're all a little defiant, and if the government came in and said, you need to do this, we'd be like, all right, I guess, and it can't be done in that spirit.
What about like this is a necessary? What about if this is like not you can't do this, but this is a necessary criteria to receive funding? Do you think that's a more
That would be great. Funding would be awesome.
So if there was grants.
Yeah, well, I'm for funding, so I'm for that.
I support that completely. I think that's a great idea. I'm in WA, and not to say anything rude about the government, as a Chinese immigrant.
They're trash.
There's no money. There is no money for WA gaming, which is why the WA gaming community is so amazing, because we're persisting anyway. But I love that. I've never thought that before, and I really love that idea.
I have to do a
Thank you.
like I have to take a part-time job to be able to fund my own game.
Yeah. When my contract work slows down, I'm working in pubs.
Yeah, and then that slows down time to actually make the actual game itself. So
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Though.
Yeah, thank you.
What was your name, sir?
Jordan.
Jordan. I follow you on Twitter.
Hey.
Talk later about all of the
Yes, please.
I want to give you.
Yes, please. I've literally never heard that before. Awesome. Yes.
Hi, I'm also in WA. I'm just again starting to learn game development, but it didn't occur to me recently until I didn't know anything about accessibility and I really need to know about it. But where would you recommend starting learning knowledge? I know there's game accessibility guidelines and as well as clarification from able gamers.
Yes. That is a really great question. Where can I start? You've already started by coming here. That's the super cheesy answer. but I mean, you've already made the proactive choice to say this needs to happen. I would say your next step is get into the community sources.
Yeah.
The best work I've ever done is just, I was so terrified, and just diving into the blind gaming community, posting my work up in audiogames.net, and I was just like, I posted it, and I'm just like biting my fingernails at the screen, like nobody's gonna care. And there was a huge response. There were like 8 pages of comments saying, yes, this sounds amazing. Please keep going. So I guess just choose an area of accessibility that you think is within your reach now, and worry about the other ones later. You know, worry about colorblindness. There's, I'm sorry I don't have the name. There's a test, automated, that you can run your game through this test for colorblindness to see if anybody will struggle, and if there are any colors that are explicitly too far into, I don't know the terminology, I'm sorry. I mean red and green are the main things they struggle with. So the automated test will identify which colors you need to change to maybe a pale purple or a bright orange. That's a good way to start.
That actually works for me because my game's lecturer is actually colorblind mostly.
Oh, okay.
Might help him.
Good start. Good start. Yes, start small. I started really stupidly. Like, I took the hardest thing, it was like, this is where I'll begin. And it was dumb. And it was so depressing for a long time. And the learning curve was just the steepest thing you can imagine. So I would say start with something that's attainable soon, and worry about the other stuff later. We're tackling blind accessibility, which is near impossible and so hard, but also not hard at all. He said, negating his entire presentation. So yeah, just somewhere that you can kind of build it. Like, it's like a game. Start level 1. Color
Don't be
level
afraid
2.
to ask as well.
Yeah, and please take one of our cards. Like, we will talk your ears off about accessibility. Like,
Send us an
don't
email,
be like,
we will-
oh, I
yeah.
need to leave them alone. Like, we're not those kind of people.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Was that okay? Was that okay? Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, I was just wondering with the rise of VR gaming, where there's a huge emphasis obviously on the visual, are they trying to make their games accessible with the gameplay for visually impaired people?
Yes, it is actually largely on the way because the spatialization of VR is incredible. If you've played it, turned your head, all the sounds move with your movement. That sensation is actually very biologically rooted and comfortable. So VR is just natural, again, accidental accessibility, we'll take it.
Yeah.
They're really on the way. I would say something to remember about tech is that a large portion of blind gamers will not be upgrading much of their equipment. So VR is probably out of the picture and impractical for a lot of them. Because what are all the upgrades? Faster refresh rate, better monitor, better resolutions, right? Why would they need that? So it's an illogical pair. I hope it happens, but VR is so expensive and it's so visually based as well that it's probably impractical. I hope it goes there, but if the price can come down, I would say they're almost bam there because the spatialization of physical turning to your sound is so strong. Did that answer?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Was there another hand I saw back near there? No. All right. Fantastic. So
Awesome.